Hello there, AP World people. Let's learn about Unit 8, the Cold War and Decolonization. Oh my gosh, so much stuff went on in this time period, it's crazy. And I studied this period a whole lot in college as well. This is where I did my kind of like history dissertation on a aspect of this period of history, so I'm sure I'm gonna fill you kids in with all kinds of knowledge. Let's do it. Come on. Alright, so first of all, when does this period begin? Well, it kind of starts in the immediate aftermath of World War II. The Nazis and the Japanese are now defeated. The main winners are the USA and the USSR. So what did each of them want in the New World? And would World War II just lead right on into World War III? These are fair questions. A lot of people were, what's going to go down? So I'm going to talk about those kind of objectives right now. So what's going on at the end of World War II? Okay, so America, what did we want? Well, we wanted to create a new world order where capitalism is the preferred economic system and there's an international peace organization to ensure world peace. I'm going to talk about that organization. It's called the United Nations. It's still around today, but you'll hear all about that in Unit 9, so I'm not going to deep dive into that now. But the United States' other goal was to become a major military superpower. I mean, they definitely were at the end of World War II. And America wanted to make sure another world war never happened. So, keep the world cool for capitalism. No more world wars. Great. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, had some conflicting goals. They didn't want to grow capitalism. They wanted to grow communism around the world. But the Soviet Union, I'm going to argue, largely had a defensive attitude. The Soviet Union was where most of the fighting occurred in World War II, and Stalin made sure that Russia would never be under military threat again. All the countries that the Red Army took over from the Nazis at the end of World War II, he ensured that those countries would either join the Soviet Union totally or that they would be kind of pro-communism and allied to the Soviet Union. So he wanted to just continue building this defensive network around Russia to make sure that no one messes with communism again. So that's their attitude. But especially the thing that Soviet Union wanted to grow communism, America wanted to grow capitalism. It's gonna put these two superpowers at odds with each other for sure. Okay, and these disagreements came to a head at the Potsdam Peace Conference. This conference occurred right after the Nazis surrendered, and at that conference we sent President Truman, and then of course Joseph Stalin was there, and these guys did not get along. Stalin and Truman could not agree of what the future would look like. Truman wanted free elections and wanted democracy and wanted capitalism. Stalin wanted totalitarianism and communism and kind of a higher readiness of military. So if anybody was at that conference and saw how these guys interacted, a lot of people would just be like, oh crap, it's gonna be World War III. Oh no. But thankfully, it wasn't. So let's talk about why. All right, so the Cold War itself. Immediately after World War II, both sides predicted a World War III. The Soviet Union is like, okay, eventually we're going to come to blows with the United States. And the United States said, okay, we're eventually going to come to blows with the Soviet Union. So this whole period called the Cold War, there was this just aura of fear all over the world that another world war could break out at any moment. And each side was doing everything they could to kind of position their forces and make alliances and get ready for when World War III would eventually happen. And if World War III did happen, well, I mean, this picture in the bottom corner shows you what it would be like. This World War III would have most certainly have been the most deadly conflict in world history. World War III most certainly would have used nuclear weapons on an unheard of scale. But thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. World War III didn't happen. And this presentation is going to tell you all about why it never happened. So there you go. Okay, so with this new Cold War world, 3 new alliance networks emerged. The alliance network led by the United States is known as NATO, and it was just about all the major capitalist countries in the world. The big players, Britain, France, just about every Western European country, Turkey, and Canada. And I know today NATO is still an active alliance. President Donald Trump really wanted like America to quit NATO, but never happened. So NATO is just kind of America and our best friends. And we have this alliance saying if any of our countries are attacked, we'll view it as all of our countries were attacked. And my understanding is the only time NATO was ever sort of called into force was on September 11th, 2001, after the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda. So all of the NATO countries said, America, we got your back. And that was really cool that happened. But anyway, during the Cold War, NATO's opponent, it was very clear, was an alliance called the Warsaw Pact. And the Warsaw Pact was led by the Soviet Union. It included most Eastern European countries, and I can't say most communist countries in the world, because eventually communism starts to split. But it was kind of like the Soviet Union and their best friends. And if World War III happened, it most certainly would have been a war between those two alliances. But then there was another kind of global team, which was known as the non-aligned movement. These people just were like, we want to stay out of all this. We don't want to mess with America or the Soviet Union. They were led by Indonesia and India. And I know like Switzerland and Sweden would also kind of be a part of that too, because they're neutral in everything. So those are the three teams in the Cold War. And this is the symbol of NATO, and this is the symbol of the Warsaw Pact. The more you know. Okay, so the Red Scare. The Cold War really got going in America after this kind of cultural theme happened called the Red Scare, where people all over the United States were just freaking out about communists and communist spies and communists living among us. This was really triggered by a dude named Julius Rosenberg, who was an American citizen, but he spied for the Soviet Union. Somehow, Julius Rosenberg got his hands on the atomic weapons blueprints. He smuggled them out of the United States and gave them to the Soviet Union. He gave the Soviet Union our super weapon. What the heck? So, in response, we arrested this guy and we arrested his wife, and we killed them both by electric chair. I think that it was pretty brutal what we did to his wife. Like, why we gotta kill his wife? I don't know. So in response, there was so many like American movies, and like you could even watch American cartoons during this time period and just see that there's this like heavy anti-communist bias and anti-Soviet Union bias. So the Cold War was definitely on, and there was this fear around the United States that communism was living among us. Dun dun dun. Communism. So bad. And in response to this Cold War mentality, some people in the United States said, okay, well, we've finished World War II. Shouldn't we stop making guns? And then other people are like, absolutely not. Like, World War III could happen at any time. We've got to keep our kind of military factory super total war mentality going. And this concept is called the military-industrial complex. And still to this day, in 2021, the United States is still the world's biggest supplier of military equipment. And we just are always making guns and tanks and bombs and planes and all this stuff. And I think it's very easy to make the argument that if America made less weapons, would the world be a more peaceful place? I would argue yes, but there's plenty of people who say America's just got to be ready for war at all times. And I really like this quote by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft of those whose hunger are not fed, whose are cold are not clothed. It's hopes of children, like America spends so much money on our military. We could spend more money on schools, but we don't, because we got to have all this money for, and then this political cartoon is great too. The military-industrial complex eating all this money, and here's the politicians. Oh no, what can we cut? Okay, let's cut more stuff for teachers, I guess. And then there's this picture here shows this union of the Department of Defense, military corporations, and Congress. They all kind of work together to keep this concept going, that America is just this super military force. Okay, but to go along with the Cold War, there was something called the nuclear arms race. With their plans the Rosenbergs stole from us, the USA and the USSR were now both in possession of nuclear weapons. And both sides started testing bigger and bigger nukes. We went to this island in the Pacific Ocean called Bikini Bottom, and we blew it up with a hydrogen bomb. And still to this day, Bikini Bottom is a radioactive wasteland island. And that's the reference to the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants. You know, it's like there are these radioactive creatures at Bikini Bottom now who can speak and serve hamburgers or something. But anyway, so eventually both the United States and the USSR are building bigger and bigger nukes, more and more nukes. We build these nuclear missiles that can target any spot on planet Earth, and we have enough weapons to destroy the Earth 5 times over. Like, it's ridiculous how many weapons we built. And these larger nukes produce significantly more radiation. And I don't know if I really described nuclear weapons that much in the last unit, but radiation is this kind of invisible cloud that emerges from nuclear substances that causes fast-acting cancer. And in the event of a nuclear attack where we were using these big, crazy nukes, we would cause this event called nuclear winter, which would basically end the environment on planet Earth, killing everybody in all countries. So that would have been real, real bad. Okay? And thankfully, both the NATO countries and the Warsaw Pact countries recognized that if we did launch a complete nuclear attack on each other, well, everyone would die. Okay? World War III wouldn't really have a winner. We would just end planet Earth as we know it. And this concept is called mutually assured destruction. Okay? So even with that fear in mind, the Cold War continued, and both sides continued to hate each other and continued to kind of pivot against each other. But we did have these limited conflicts. There were now a bunch of rules on how we would fight wars, because we were afraid that if we kind of used too much of our military power, then the Soviet Union might respond with a nuclear holocaust. So, you know, that would be bad. And that's really going to define so many of the conflicts during this period. All right, moving on. So, yeah, I already mentioned global nuclear contamination. Oh, and look, there's the picture of Bikini Bottom, kids. Just launching this giant nuke, displacing just so much water. And then to give you some perspective, too, the Hiroshima bomb went, what is this, 10,000 feet up in the air? Ah, darn, you can hardly see it because my camera's in the way. Well, anyway, right here in this zone, this is where airplanes fly. Hydrogen bombs go about 20,000 feet up in the air. But we did develop these bombs, well, really the Soviet Union developed them, called the Tsar Bomba. And the Tsar Bomba's mushroom cloud is so incredible, it actually enters outer space to a degree. So, oh my gosh, just huge, unbelievably big bombs. I think the Tsar Bomba could destroy the entirety of Los Angeles County. So, look out. And yeah, and as the Cold War begins, more and more nukes get made, more and more nukes get made. But by the time we get to 1986, this is close to the end of the Cold War, we have the peak amount of nuclear weapons on planet Earth, and this goes all the way to 2014, so there are less nukes in the world today than there were in the 1980s, because recently, America and now Russia are like talking it out, and we just continually eliminate some of our nuclear weapons, which is pretty awesome. So the world is a less nuclear concerned place than it used to be. I'm going to give a little highlight to Las Vegas, Nevada, actually, in this presentation, because something that made our town famous, not only was it resorts and gambling, but it was also the fact that more than half of all the nuclear weapons ever detonated on planet Earth were detonated in the Nevada nuclear test site, which is about 150 miles north of Las Vegas. And people would come to Las Vegas and have this kind of nuclear tourism where they would set up cameras and stuff and drive close to the test site to watch from far away bombs going off. And I talked to this guy who grew up in Las Vegas. He an old man now. And he was telling me, like, he'd be like running around in high school on the track team. And then all of a sudden this bright giant flash of light would go off, in the Northeast somewhere. He'd look and he'd be like, oh, an atomic bomb. And he'd just like keep running. And I don't know. When I heard that, I thought it was hilarious. But of course, the Nevada test site today is just covered in radiation. Definitely don't recommend going there, kids. And they've got all these signs up here saying contaminated area, look out. Here's the picture of it from the sky. If you ever fly over it with a plane or a helicopter, you'll just see all these craters from bombs we exploded in our state. And I think there is some concerns that, did all this radiation contaminate Nevada's groundwater? But I think we're largely okay. It's just interesting. So let's check out some of these pictures here. Oh, dang it. I wanted to zoom in on these pictures. But yeah, here's some people hanging out in a hotel. You see a nuclear mushroom cloud in the background. There's people on Fremont Street. The biggest A-bomb ever exploded goes over the Nevada proving ground. And then here are these warning labels they sent to everybody who lives in Las Vegas saying, in the next week, don't get freaked out if you see a big giant flash of light. It's just an atomic bomb. It's just one of those. All right, so the space race. This is another really important concept of the Cold War. This is kind of the most non-violent and kind of cool way of challenging a country you don't get along with. But the Soviet Union and the USA, we competed for scientific achievement. And it's hard to say like who's the winner of the space race, but the Soviet Union definitely got started on the right path. They were the first country to ever build a spaceship, and they sent this guy named Yuri Gagarin to be the first person ever to go into outer space and to come back to planet Earth. So that's super cool, and they did that in 1961. Well, the USA wouldn't be, outdone by the Soviet Union, so we invested millions of dollars into public education, invented hundreds of new technologies, we invented our own spaceships, and we sent Neil Armstrong to go walking on the moon in 1969. And that's awesome. But then the Soviet Union built the first space station. They also built the first satellite. So maybe in all, the Soviet Union won the space race, but it still had some huge ramifications in improving our technology and showing that humans can go in outer space. That's super cool. Spacing it up. All right. Okay, so overall, let's just kind of compare the USA and the USSR, because that's so much of what the Cold War is about. Both countries had massive world-destroying militaries. Both countries had international spy agencies that operated in every single country in the world. The USA had the CIA, the USSR had the KGB. And, I mean, like, if you ever seen, like, a James Bond movie or something, it's always these, like, spies fighting each other in interesting countries around the world, and that stuff definitely did happen in real life. And it was so clear to just every person on planet Earth how much these countries hated each other. But here are some differences, though, and these differences would get pointed out a lot by both the Soviet Union and the United States. In the Soviet Union, women had full rights and were given full opportunities. There's a lot of examples of women in high governmental positions in the Soviet Union, of women being totally valued and totally appreciated legally. Also in the Soviet Union, there generally wasn't a lot of racism, and racism was seen as like not a big part of their society, so they really pushed that out a lot. And alternatively, in the United States, well, racism was a big thing. It was during the time of civil rights and Martin Luther King, so the Soviet Union hated on us for that. It's like, look, you, America, you're not being nice to minorities. In the Soviet Union, we love everybody. So Soviet Union's better. And we're like, dang it. But, however, the Soviet Union did not have any real opportunities to grow wealth beyond the middle class. The Soviet Union had some pretty low wages for like doctors and scientists and super highly productive people in society. And so the USA constantly got on the Soviet Union for that. It's like, hey, Soviet Union, like, how much money you got? Because we got way more than you. And the Soviet Union's like, but you don't share it with the poor. So it was just back and forth of these kind of ideological differences of capitalism versus communism. All right, moving on. All right, decolonization. I'll save this for the next video. That's it for me. Peace out.